Well, hello there, and welcome to episode 37 of the Rock Podcast. For those about to pod, we salute you. In this episode, we look back at 2005. Good luck, Brian. We take a look at the recent rock news and new releases. We discuss power trios. And finally, everyone's favourite part of the old podcast, Hidden Gem Time. So without further ado, here he is, Limavardi's finest, the podcaster in the north. How many nicknames has he got? We don't know. Here's Brian.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right, Brian. I'm doing all right. Do you know what? I was listening to the old theme music there, and I thought one day we should play the entire thing in its entirety.
Well, not have much left to talk about then.
Oh, really? Is it that long? There's a couple of people asked me about that music. You know, who's it by and where's it come from and everything. So maybe we should just play it out at some point. Anyway, let's move on.
Okay.
So last time we spoke, Brian, we talked about the Taylor Hawkins gig, which took place at Wembley Stadium, and a couple of weekends ago, the Los Angeles tribute gig took place at the LA Forum, a slightly more intimate venue, if a 20,000 seat arena can be intimate, but slightly more intimate than Wembley Stadium. I didn't watch it live, Brian. I must admit, it was way past my bedtime. But the highlights, there's some highlights, weren't there? I mean, it was slightly different bill to the London gig, but good all the same, wasn't it?
It was.
Highlights for you?
Yeah, I didn't watch it live. Caught up on YouTube to see all of the performances. It felt that the band, certainly the Foo Fighters, were a lot more at ease with playing. It's as if the London gig was one where the raw emotion was a challenge the first time they'd all played together, and it really felt like a celebration in Los Angeles, where everybody seemed a lot more comfortable. Dave Grohl was smiling, and it was excellent. He made a great comment where he called Taylor a musicologist, and he said he was always playing. He was always playing tunes. You know, he could hear him 3 blocks away when he drove up to the studio. And I thought it was interesting that, you were hearing tunes by Jerry Rafferty right down the line, which is a song I love. And then you had, Def Leppard with playing Photograph with Miley Cyrus and Rock of Ages. Barracuda. It was as if here's a playlist of Taylor's greatest tunes, and I've got some of my pals to come out and play them. So it looked like a lot more of a polished show in my view. I thought it was great.
I'm with you. Highlights for me. You're right. You touched upon Miley Cyrus, who we talked about before, having a really good rock voice.
Yes.
If you remember, she did a version of Nothing Else Matters, I think, on a Metallica tribute. She got a really, really good voice. And did she look the part.
Didn't she?
And good on her, why not? I tell you what, some little hidden gems, dare I say. Mark King from Level 42 popped up. And I have to say, one of my guilty pleasures is this song. The song you play, Something About You, by Level 42. That's a great song. Put that on the old playlist, Brian, please.
I will do, absolutely.
And that was good. And Joan Jett opened the proceedings. As you say, the version of Barracuda with Pink, another fantastic rock voice. Clearly, very popular in the pop kind of genre, pop arena, as it were, but fantastic rock voice. And to hit the notes of Barracuda, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I was slightly, I was wondering what was happening with Alanis Morissette's performance of You Ought to Know. She seemed to be wanting to get her steps up. So all she did was walk across diagonal patterns across the arena.
That's
which
very
is quite
true.
Interesting. I do like that song though. And as we know, Taylor Hawkins was her touring drummer back in the mid 90s. In fact, Joe Elliott told an interesting story about first bumping into Taylor Hawkins in a record store in Laguna Hills, I think it was, a music store. The other things, if you're watching the highlights, there's a couple of kind of factors or a couple of elements which will be consistent with the London gig. One, it was very well rehearsed.
Yeah.
Secondly, there's a lot of hugging. Thirdly, there's a lot of swearing. So don't watch it with grandma necessarily. Yeah. Other sort of hidden gems, as it were. Sebastian Bach, Geezer Butler, Lars Ulrich did Supernaut,
which a song I didn't know. I didn't know that exactly. One. No. And Paranoid, of course, but did a really good version of Supernaut. I didn't play. Tony wasn't there, but Geezer said it was great. Had a great time. And Rush. Now, when I was watching the Rush piece, so it was Geddy and Alex and Dave Grohl for 2112 Overture again. Yeah.
Chad Smith joined them for Working Man this time, and Danny Carey from Tool.
Oofed.
Joined them for YYZ. Now, I was thinking to myself when I was watching this, I'm wondering what Mike Portnoy makes of this, because he's obviously a massive Rush fan, and I would have thought it's a slightly sort of tinged with envy that he was watching those other guys. But anyway, that was that. And of course, our man Wolfgang Van Halen shredding again. Fantastic, wasn't it?
Panama. He played Panama.
Brilliant.
And he was brilliant, and it was kind of nice that same supergroup was kept together, and they played, Panama and Hot for a Teacher, and Wolfgang was very he was phenomenal. He really was. He was good. And you
can't help but like him, can you? You can't help but want to give him a big old hug, Wolfgang Van Halen. And as you say, aided and abetted by Josh Freese again and Justin Hawkins on the vocals. Wouldn't that be great if they became a proper band?
Yeah,
doing Van Halen songs.
well, interestingly, obviously, there's been a few of the ex Van Halen members have said on the back of how successful and how poignant the Taylor Hawkins tribute concert has been. Sammy Hagar's come out and said it would be really nice if we could do something for Eddie, and Wolfgang's kind of come out, and I think he's felt by playing his dad's music at the two tribute concerts, he's done. He's played it. He's done a tribute to his dad by playing Panama, and he has no interest in playing Van Halen material. So, in some ways, I think Wolfgang's paid tribute to his dad, as Rush have paid tribute, I think, to Neil Peart as well too. So, the likelihood of an Eddie Van Halen tribute concert, I think, is less and less, because the longer it goes, and you need Wolfgang there.
Yeah,
to do it. But so another supergroup that was put together for the tribute concert was the Seattle supergroup, which had members of Soundgarden and the surviving members of Nirvana, fronted by the wonderful Taylor Momsen from the Pretty Reckless, and they did a couple of Soundgarden tracks, The Day I Tried to Live and obviously Black Hole Sun, and I thought that was fantastic. It was just it was just nice that the Seattle guys got together and made a very, very nice sound together. I thought that worked very, very well. Sometimes you crunch bands together and it doesn't work, but I thought that was really lovely. And Black Hole Sun was quite something special. She's a great singer, and I'm going to see her next month.
And then finally, so some Queen songs were performed, including Under Pressure and Somebody to Love, which was great. What was interesting, a different variety of drummers joined the Foo Fighters. Brad Wilk was there, Travis Barker was back, Matt Cameron was a fantastic drummer. We saw him in the summer, of course, with Pearl Jam.
Yeah.
Great haircut, very kind of like, accountant haircut, a great drummer. The ubiquitous Omar Hakim. I just like saying Omar Hakim. Such a good name, isn't it?
It's a fabulous name.
And of course, Taylor's son, Shane Hawkins, did a couple of songs, My Hero and I'll Stick Around. And of course, Chad Smith was back behind the Skins as well. Yeah. So again, was there an audition process? I don't know. I'm not convinced that the Foo Fighters will continue, frankly. I don't know. There's something inside me that says there's a similarity between when John Bonham died back in 1980, Led Zepp called it a day. And I have a nasty but understandable, sympathetic feeling that maybe this is the end of the Foo Fighters. I don't know. Of course, I don't know, but you never know. And I wouldn't be surprised. So that was the Taylor Hawkins tribute show at the LA Forum, which looked remarkably like the O2.
It did, didn't it?
But maybe we should go. We should go there one day, Brian. We should go to the LA Forum. We should make a special effort.
Do a podcast live from the LA Forum.
Maybe we should. Because remember, we first started talking about doing it from a pub, and now we've branched out to doing it from the LA Forum.
And we could go to the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
We could. The trouble is, though, when we try to do these outside broadcast type sort of recordings, we're so drunk that they turn out terribly.
So or I'm sleeping.
Or you're asleep. Or I'm drunk and asleep. Or any combination thereof. Anyway, in other news, Brian.
In other news, I went to see the Dio Dreamers Never Die documentary at the weekend. It's obviously before it comes out on streaming services, and probably will come out on DVD as well too, in selected theatres and cinemas across the country and across the world. They had it showing, and luckily in Edinburgh at the Cameo Cinema, they were showing it on Sunday evening. I went to see it. I thought it was a nice trot through Ronnie James Dio's career, starting out as a crooner in the 50s. Matt, he was singing in the 50s, and then all the way through to his his untimely passing. And really, you just learnt what a phenomenal singer he is, what a nice guy. I have to say, one of the takeaways from Ronnie James Dio, from a lot of the fans who were interviewed and commented during the film, there was people who he would see them at a gig, and then 20 years later he would remember their name and ask them, "Oh, the last time I saw you, your dad wasn't well." And Ronnie would, and Rudy Sarzo, who was in Dio in the later incarnations, he was sort of sitting there going, how does Ronnie remember all of these people's names? So he seemed a really personable person, stuck to his guns musically. He left Rainbow whenever Ritchie Blackmore wanted to conquer America. So when Since You've Been Gone was presented to Ronnie, it was like, I'm out of here. Really? Very, very principled. And it was like, the what Rainbow did well, as you and I love, the Dungeons and Dragons, the Man in the Silver Mountain stuff. He was never going to go into Since You've Been Gone and the Graham Bonnet era, and he went. Lots of his alumni, great singers that Glenn Hughes, Rob Halford, Geezer, Tony Iommi, lots of people came in. And when you think of through his career, he joined Rainbow. Ritchie was kind of, what am I going to do? I'm out of Purple. Took Rainbow to a certain level. He joined Black Sabbath when Ozzy had left, and they were a little bit rudderless, and they come up with Heaven and Hell. I think 2 hours if you're coming to Ronnie James Dio and you're an occasional fan, I think you'll walk away and you go, what an amazing singer he is. But for people who are big fans of Ronnie James Dio, as I am, it could quite easily have been a 3-part documentary map. And you could have focused on the Rainbow years. You could have focused on the the Black Sabbath era, and you could have done his solo albums. To me, Holy Diver, Heaven and Hell, and Rainbow Rising are three of the best rock albums of all time, and they're worthy of a classic albums piece. So I just thought it was too short. You could have interviewed Bob Daisley. It was great. I really enjoyed it, and for rock fans out there, go and watch it, because overdue for me, the voice of heavy metal.
Yeah, very good, very good. Looking forward to seeing it. Something we need to mention, by the way, last time we spoke, we were talking about the new album from Revival Black.
Yeah.
And it was funny because the next day, almost, Dan Byrne, who I've met a few times, he's a really, really nice guy. And he's sung with Mike Gray's band, and obviously Mike with Revival Black, a tremendous singer. I first met him at a festival, and he did karaoke, and I said to him, "You should be in a band." He says, "I am. We're playing at the next Planet Rock event, and we're opening the show." I was like, "Well, okay, great, good luck." And I bumped into him a few times over the months, and I saw him at Steelhouse, and he didn't give any kind of indication that he was splitting up from Revival Black. They had the new album coming out, but all of a sudden, on the literally a few days after the album, which is excellent.
Oh, it's a brilliant album.
It was released. Dan announced that he was leaving to pursue his own kind of solo career. What that will turn into, we don't know. Won't be with Mike Gray. Mike Gray's gone to live in America, so he's no longer performing in this country for sure. And Kim Jennett, has joined Revival Black. Be interested to see how that plays out, of course. Yeah. And there seems to be a fairly amicable split, and the guys from Revival Black have welcomed Kim into the band, and we'll see how that plays out. Kim had sung with Mike Gray, so there's a sort of a link there. Yeah. But I just thought, oh no, have we given them the kiss of death? We bigged up the album.
We did, didn't we? We were like, what a fantastic album. And then it's like...
And all of a sudden... But it's still worth checking out. The album that came out a few weeks ago from Revival Black. And I thought it was an interesting move, really, to leave just after the album's come out. Yeah.
For me... As you say, very amicable, and Dan's lovely. He's and I'm sure the other guys in Revival Black are nice guys as well too. But usually you would have thought if it's going to be amicable and you've got a tour coming up that's going to support the album, you would have thought, why not tour the album, do the promo for the album, and then do the cycle. Do the album tour, and then after the tour, then go your separate ways. So then if you're going to bring a new singer in, you can do that with new material rather than not tour the album. That's the bit I find quite strange. But Kim's a great singer. I follow Kim on Facebook, and she's always putting things that she's doing up vocally, and she's fantastic. But I agree with you. Timing of it was a bit strange because they had some momentum. They've been playing festivals. Dan's out there playing with Mike Gray. So there was people were looking forward to the album, lots of pre-orders. So yeah, kind of a little bit of a damp squid, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame.
But we wish them well, Revival Black.
We do.
And Dan, of course, Dan Bird, nice guy. Look forward to bumping into him again at festivals, as I've done a few times over the years. So, new releases.
Yes.
Now, in 37 podcasts, I've got a feeling, and I could be wrong, we've mentioned the mighty Diamond Head once or twice. Now, Diamond Head have a new album out. I say new. So I've got it here, actually, and it's magnificent. So basically, they've remastered their pre-1980 back catalogue.
Uh-huh.
Try and be interested, right?
I am.
They've remastered their pre-1980 back catalogue, including their seminal first album, Lightning to the Nations, which I bought back in 1980 or thereabouts. And they've added in some original mixes of songs like Sweet Innocent and the ubiquitous Am I Evil. So well worth checking out. I've done a Brian. I bought the whole deluxe package, triple album, T-shirt, the whole kit and caboodle.
You've done me proud, mate. If you're going to be a fan, you've got to go all the way in. And you know what? Bands only make money these days on merch and physical product. Yep.
Exactly. That's kind of why I did it, really, in a way.
Yep.
No, I did it because I'm a completist. But no, so check it out. It's you can stream it, and it's good.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of Nawabum feel to it, even though it's been sort of remastered and so on. And yeah, check it out. Anyway,
and other new releases as well too. We've talked about the lead singer of Black Sabbath. The original lead singer of Black Sabbath has just released a couple of weeks ago his 13th studio album.
Wow. Yes.
Which was Patient Number 9 from Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. And now, I've watched, on this podcast, I would hope by the time we will still be going, this podcast will be going by the time Ozzy tours with Judas Priest, maybe in 2023 or 2024?
Next year, 23.
Okay, right, fingers crossed. But obviously, Ozzy's done a few things of late. He did the Commonwealth Games with Tony. He's done a little halftime show with his solo band. And I listened to the album. I wasn't expecting much, but I have to say I was very, very impressed with the songwriting. Obviously, he seems to have a studio band now, which comprises of obviously Andrew Watt, who is his main producer on the album, but it seems to be around Chad Smith is drumming on it, Duff McKagan. And then the guitarists on it can be anything from Tony Iommi, Jeff Beck, Zach, Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. And it actually flows really, really nicely as an album. And there's a couple of co-writes on it with Tony Iommi as well. Tony Iommi, or not so much co-writes, but featuring Tony, songs like No Escape From Now and Degradation Rules, which is great. I was pleasantly surprised, Matt. Doesn't break any new ground for Ozzy, but no. as an album, I thought it was I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, good. Well, I listened to it a few times when I was out walking the dog, of course, as I often do when it comes to albums. And you're right; he's not reinventing himself by any means. Good to hear the collaborations with Tony Iommi. Of course, as you say, Jeff Beck's on there. Eric Clapton's on there, so he's got some famous friends, of course. And I think a bit like Dave Grohl, if you get a call from Ozzy saying, "Do you want to play on my new album?" I'd probably say, "Yeah, okay, great, yeah, count me in."
Unless you're Jimmy Page, who said no.
Exactly, yeah. Jimmy wasn't interested, was he? I think he wasn't keen on the whole kind of dialing it in type feel to it, which is fair enough. But I think well worth a listen. And good old Ozzy. He's suffering at the moment. I think he's got the early onset of Parkinson's disease, and he's had one or two ups and downs. So we wish him well. Yeah. Billy Idol's got a new song out called "The Cage," and if you thought Billy Idol was all kind of White Wedding and Rebel Yell and everything, check out his new song called "The Cage." It's really good, and he seems to have kind of matured, let's say, into the 21st century as a singer. So check that out. New live EP we don't get EPs very much anymore, do we? New live EP from Smith Kotzen, recorded mainly in this country, which is nice. So there's plenty of new music out for everyone to get hold of and have a good listen to.
Cool.
So last time, Brian, I gave you the year 2005 to reminisce about a mere, how long ago was it? 17 years ago.
Oh, brilliant.
17 years. Or, of course, if you're listening in 21 a mere 95 years ago. So, Brian, take us back to 2005. How was it for you?
2005. 2005. Good year for gigs. Didn't go to massive amount of gigs. I would probably pick out 3 gigs in 2005, which I remember well. 2005, I went to see U2 in Hampden. That would have been around the time of the G8 summit that was happening in Scotland at the time. I remember it quite well that Bono was, supporting that and campaigning very well for the Drop the Debt, I think, as it was at the time. But they still put on a great show. I went to see Bryan Adams again for the gazillionth time. He was playing in the SEC. Brian always puts on a great show. But the surprise for me in 2005 was I got to see Velvet Revolver. And I went to see them in the Newcastle Arena. Now, the first album, I thought as a band they sounded really, really good for a supergroup.
Thank you.
And Scott Wheeldon as a lead singer was fantastic. But whenever they did the Guns N' Roses material, I missed Axl. But I always remember the show. I thought they were tight as anything. You know, Slash was on top form. They were a well-oiled machine by the time they got to the UK. So I'm pleased I got to see Velvet Revolver when they all seemed to be fighting fit at that time. So those are the 3 gigs. Other things to remember in 2005. Obviously, I've talked about the G8 summit. So that was around about Live 8. So that was Pink Floyd got back together. The classic lineup with Roger Waters and Dave Gilmour, and played that classic, amazing set of, Wish You Were Here, Comfortably Numb, which was brilliant. And for you and I, we lost a musical icon in 2005. We lost Tommy Vance. We lost Tommy Vance in 2005. Albums-wise, an eclectic mix of albums, Matt, in 2005. The ones I'll go with, this band seems to get pillared from whenever you mention them, and I think they're a great band. Be interested in your view of them. Nickelback released all the Right Reasons, which obviously have the big single off the album was Rockstar, but one of my personal favorites, which is Photograph, it's probably my favorite Nickelback tune. That is just such a great, it's just a really, really solid album. So I really, in 2005, I thought that was a great album. Audioslave brought out Out of Exile. Again, building on the debut album, it got nominated for Grammys for Best Album. And then 2 small albums I'll mention. You know me, I love my projects. There was a project from Frontier Records, surprise, surprise, and it was called The Mob. And The Mob had Doug Pinnock from King's X. It had the lead guitarist from Winger, Reb Beach, and the lead vocalist and drummer, Kelly Geehee, from Night Ranger. And they were called The Mob. They only did the one album. It's a project, but it's a really, really strong album. It's very melodic rock. It's in that Night Ranger Winger type feel, but I loved the album. Sure. It was a really, really good album. And then the final one, which is probably more of an indie rock album, a great band from the UK. I played this album to death. It's a band called Longview. I remember at the time it got a lot of advertising on the telly, and it was an album called Mercury. It was the only album they ever did, and it's some fantastic tracks on it. Rob McVeigh was the main singer and guitarist, and that is my whistle stop tour through 2005, mate. Good year.
Wow.
How about you?
That was a whistle stop tour, wasn't it? Oh my goodness. Well, yeah, similar actually. I saw. I went to that U2 tour as well at Twickenham Stadium. Well, you and I went to see Maiden a couple of years after that, actually.
Did I?
And it turned out that my wife was there. I didn't know her then. Kate, my wife. She was there. I may have bumped into her. You never know.
May have done.
I may have kind of opened a door for her.
Sliding doors.
No, they were just, you opened them, the normal doors there, I seem to recall. But I may have opened the normal door for her and she might have gone in and said, thank you. Yeah. But we shall never know.
We will never know.
We shall never know. I saw Judas Priest on the Angel of Retribution tour. They were on with a little band called the Scorpions opening for them. That's quite a double bill. Hammersmith Odeon. That's a good album. Angel of Retribution. Judas Rising is a good song. Classic kind of Priest songs. Demonizer. What's that about? It's a love song, maybe? We don't know. Hell Rider. Come on. And a song called Loch Ness, which is all of 13 and a half minutes long. I'll leave it to you to think about what that's about.
Okay.
So Diamond Head headlined this is true actually, the 25th anniversary of Nwabum at the Astoria in London. In fact, there's a DVD of it which I'm on, complete with goatee and brown leather jacket. I don't know what I was thinking in those days. In fact, my jacket and my beard matched in terms of colour. But that's because it's grey now, the old beard, sadly. Anyway, so that was 2005 gigs-wise. Albums, I think the standout one for me was Queen and Paul Rodgers, Return of the Champions. Live album. Did you not like that?
Please continue with your review of your album of choice.
No, I did enjoy that. I liked Paul Rodgers with Queen. I know you weren't a big fan, but I did like him, and I think he did justice to the Queen songs, and they did put in some classic Free and Bad Company songs to placate Mr. Rodgers.
Yes,
which is nice. Foos brought out In Your Honor. Standout song from there is Best of You, and Robert Plant brought out one of his many solo albums, Mighty Rearranger, which is worth a listen. It's that classic kind of Plant going left of centre. Shine a Light is the sort of standout song on the album. Yeah, all in all, good year. Looking back, it was good year for gigs and albums to some extent. It's certainly better than the year 2000, Brian.
They will take a long, the barren desert of music in 2000. Do you know what? Can you imagine if we had known each other in the year 2000, we could have recorded an album and we may have been millionaires now. In that barren, desolate.
You and I met in 2001, didn't we?
Yes. Who knows? We could have recorded our Robson and Jerome rock album and yeah. Yeah,
that's a good point. Actually, well, we should still do that.
Yeah.
You can play the guitar a little bit, not very well, but you can play a bit. I can sing a little bit, not very well, but a bit.
Exactly.
And so you never know. Anyway, so that was 2005.
In time-honoured fashion, then, as you gave me 2005, it is my turn to provide you with the year.
Okay.
I'm getting this podcast thing now.
Yeah, slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. I would like to give you, still in the 2000s, I'd like to give you 2017.
Oh, okay. A mere
5 years ago.
Thank you. Okay, I look forward to that. 2017. Should be able to remember that quite easily.
So, Matt, isn't it interesting that we've talked the last couple of episodes about the Taylor Hawkins tribute concert, and many of the acts that you and I were both looking forward to, Rush, the Reformed Supergrass, them Crooked Vultures, and the James Gang, were all three pieces. And it got you and I thinking about three pieces and power trios and who we thought were our favourites. Why do power trios work? Why do three pieces work in some of our favourite bands? That's what we wanted to talk about in this segment of the show.
Yeah. My question is, why power trio? Why are they called power trios? I mean, everyone by definition is powerful because you've got amplification. But why power trio? You don't have a kind of a fabulous 4-piece or a fantastic 5-piece, do you? Or a stupendous... Anyway, never mind. You get the general idea.
I do.
Yes, power trios. And I was thinking about this actually, because there's not many, is there? I mean, there's that little old band from Texas that you talk about once or twice, I've spoken about once or twice, King's X. There's ZZ Top. I couldn't think of any. I thought, well, is that it? And then I started to have a thing, and there's loads.
Isn't there just?
And I wonder whether it's because it's always a singing bass player or a singing guitarist. And I don't know why you would. I suppose in a way you'd think, well, look, I can play bass and sing, so I don't need a singer. Or I can play the guitar and sing, so I don't need a separate singer. So it becomes that sort of logical, sort of pragmatic statement, doesn't it? As opposed to, I can play the guitar, he can play the bass, we're not very good at singing, let's get a singer. So I suppose it's a sort of logical thing, really. But a thing, this power trio thing, that's been developed. And of course, it all started with Cream, didn't it?
It did.
They were and I read this, and I quote, the prototypical power trio. I love that. Prototypical. And I suppose they were, really, back in the sort of mid-60s.
Yeah.
Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, and Ginger Baker, of course. And a lot of bands have been influenced by them, of course. And, I mean, Rush made no secret of the fact they were heavily influenced by that kind of virtuoso playing. Because the reason that they chose Cream, and this might be apocryphal, but they felt, well, we're the cream of the crop. We're the best. He's the best drummer. I'm the best guitarist. He's the best bass player. So why not Cream? And Rush, very similarly, were and are virtuoso. Those remaining members are virtuoso players. So I guess that's where it all started.
Yeah, and around that time in 66, I think, was when Cream got going. Obviously, Jimi Hendrix then came across to the UK, and Chas Chandler went, right, and I need to build a band around Jimmy. So what does he do? He builds a trio of Mitch Mitchell, Jimmy, and the bass player. No Redding, of course. Thank you. That's a good save. Thanks, Matt. No Redding. Who actually was a guitar player. Wasn't a bass player. He had to get converted into being a bass player. He was originally a guitar player.
Is that right?
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
But I often, yeah. So I that's that. So in some ways, trios, more money goes around for a trio. And if you've got a lead, you can imagine if you've got a lead singer out there and all he's doing is shaking a tambourine, etc. Everybody in a power trio is possibly doing at least one job or possibly two jobs. You could be, singing background vocals, unless you're Geddy Lee and you're doing 12 jobs, which is like,
yes, true.
but you're fully employed in a power trio.
That's true, actually. Yeah, you're right. There's no kind of, because speaking as a singer in a 4 or 5 piece band, as I've been over the years, there's a little bit of kind of awkwardness when you're there's a solo going on. You're thinking, what do I do now? I mean, it's not long enough for me to go off and have a lie down or anything. I might as well just hang around. So you're right. I mean, it takes away that embarrassing moment for the singer, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
And that probably is the essence of why there are power trios, to reduce the amount of embarrassment on stage. But you're right. I mean, those were the early power trios. Then Lizzie, you mentioned them 1,000 or 2,000 times on this podcast. They started as a 3-piece, didn't they? With Eric Bell and Brian Downey, and of course the singing bass player / frontman that was filled in it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they started off as a trio and a blues based, folky in terms of their material. And then when Eric Bell left, they bring in Gary Moore, and then Gary Moore leaves, and then Phil Lynott goes, maybe trios is not the way to go. Maybe we need a spare guitar player, so you go to a 4-piece. So yeah, it started, and some of that early Lizzie stuff as a 3-piece is very progressive. Very, the first album is quite progressive rock in some ways, quite bluesy. It's really good.
And for Ireland seems to have spawned several 3-piece. Taste, of course. With your man Rory Gallagher, and then more moving through the 70s, Mama's Boys, of course.
Yeah.
From your part of the world.
Yeah. Up the north.
Originally were a 3-piece, of course, the three McManus brothers.
Yeah.
Taste, of course, was Rory Gallagher, of course, for those who don't know. And who else was in that band? Remind me, Brian.
Jerry McAvoy.
Yeah.
Brendan O'Neill. Ted Mc. Do you want me to go through the entire? No. But Rory, in the latter part of his career, went back to a 3-piece for many years, particularly in the 70s. He had a keyboard player on stage with him. So he moved to a 4-piece. But classic Rory and some of the albums that he did. Probably top priority in 1979 was, his power. He had Ted McKenna. Ted McKenna from Michael Schenker and Sensational Larvik's Harvey Band. And Jerry. That was a real 3-piece. Rory was work. And maybe, do you know what, Matt? Talking about dynamics, some guitarists play better on their own. You think of all of the great guitar players that we've talked about in previous shows. I could never see Ritchie Blackmore. No. Ritchie Blackmore's never going to share a stage with another guitar player. Eddie Van Halen, Eddie, So I do think if you've got somebody, I think some of the great guitar players maybe struggled to play nice with another player on stage.
That's a good point. That's a very good point. And I think there's an element of that as well. You're right in terms of why they are 3-pieces. The other thing you touched upon with Rory Gallagher is augmenting the band for live performances, because the only limitation when you've got 3 of you is that during the solo, all you got behind the solo is the drums and the bass. You haven't, unless you've got kind of hidden players, which has happened. But subsequently, you talk about bands like Green Day, when you see them live, there's about 5 of them. Yeah. There's obviously the basic 3, Mike Dirnt and Trey Cool and
Billy
Joe Armstrong. Thank you. But then of course they're augmented by the rest of the band. But going back to this sort of 70s, of course, we mustn't forget Budgie. Budgie were one of those bands that sometimes for some reason gets kind of labelled with the sort of New Album tag, but they started in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And I guess they stay pretty sort of true to their roots. And again, while we're checking out, they did some seminal stuff back in the day. Bread Fan, of course, the song that everyone knows from Budgie.
Yeah.
But blessed again, I think you need players that can play to kind of fill the space. You need a solid drummer. You need probably a very kind of experimental bass player, and obviously a guitarist that could play riffs and lead. And they certainly had that in spades. We can't not mention the great ZZ Top, of course. The other band from Texas. I think it started as a 4 or 5-piece, possibly in the late 60s, but obviously traditionally are well known as since about 1969 to the present day, despite the fact Darcy Hill passed away a couple of years ago, are still a 3-piece. And when you see them, they don't need that augmentation on stage, do they? They just play the songs, and very similar to the records, where there's not much overdubbing or double tracking or anything like that. But yeah, they're probably the 3-piece that everyone everyone knows about. And similarly, the other kind of household name, certainly as a result of their success in the late 70s, early 80s, is the mighty Motorhead, who did go through periods of being a four-piece.
That's correct.
Traditionally, with a kind of the classic three-piece, with Lemmy, Filthy Phil, and that's really where I got into rock, around sort of Bomber, Overkill album of 1979.
And I think Motorhead, again, Eddie was a very, very good rhythm player, and I just the chemistry of that band as a three-piece worked very, very well. It's interesting that when Brian Robertson replaced Eddie, the chemistry wasn't there as a three-piece, in my view. And then in order to replace Eddie, you needed Wurzel and Phil to come in and bring that sound up. So it is interesting, the chemistry where you think of modern day bands, the Stereophonics started out as a three-piece, and that was probably, and I think they started out as a five-piece, and then they whittled it down to the three-piece that they started out, and they sounded great. I saw them as a three-piece, and they were fantastic. And don't forget Uncle Glenn. I can't forget Uncle Glenn. Uncle Glenn with Trapeze, obviously with Mel Galley, Dave Holland. Trapeze, very funky, but as a three-piece were fantastic in those around that time as well too. And I thought it's interesting that whenever Richie was getting itchy feet around the time after, when he was after the recording of Burn, he went off with Ian Pace and was going to pull a band together with Phil Lynott, again a three-piece. So I suppose it seems to work if you've got a guitar player who's either a good singer or willing to do all of the bits and bobs and able to fill out the sound. A three-piece works very, very well. What about the 60s and 70s? What about the 80s? Any power trio of note in the 80s and beyond?
Apart from King's X, you mean?
Well, we're not talking about King's X is given.
No album spawned one or two. I remember seeing Tank, three-piece, Algie Ward, who'd been in The Damned, and the Brabs brothers, supporting Diamond Head. That was a strange marriage back in 1982. Angel Witch were worth checking out. Their first couple of albums, tremendous, and really should have been one of the kind of the cream of the Nawabum crop. Rock Goddess, three-piece, three girls. Only recently called it a day, 40 odd years on from Nawabum. So there were a few back in the day. Of course, the Police, a little-known band, sort of thrown together in the late 70s. They had a little bit of success, didn't they? I seem to recall.
I believe so.
Yeah. And then moving into the 90s, Nirvana, of course. Again, similarly had a bit of success, didn't they? I don't know what happened to that drummer they had. He was pretty good.
He kind of went off, did some demos, and whatever became of David Grohl.
That's right. And in the 2000s, there have been, as you said earlier, one or two of those groups that have come together from other bands. I forget what they're called again, bro. What are they called?
Supergroups.
Supergroups, that's it. Winery Dogs, we've mentioned once or twice. Them Crooked Vultures, of course. So yeah, the three-piece is alive and kicking. We saw a couple in the summer. Mercury Riots, a band from California, where we're checking out. And Mother Vulture was the band we saw opening, or rather I saw. You were still asleep, of course, Brian. Opening the Saturday of Steelhouse 2022. They're amazing. So much energy there. So, yeah. Notable mentions, Brian?
Notable mentions for me, you've covered a lot of the bases. I would call out a few bands, a few additionals. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. I think Stevie Ray Vaughan picked up Jimi Hendrix's mantle and took it further into the 80s. A guitarist who I, interestingly, when he was in Whitesnake, the only ever incarnation of Whitesnake that had one guitarist, which was with John Sykes. John, when he left Whitesnake, put together Blue Murder, which was with Carmen Appice and Tony Franklin. And two shout outs to a band that's much maligned and I don't think gets as much credit as it should do, is Mountain. Leslie West, Corky Lang, and Felix Pappalardi, who obviously, I think Felix famously produced Cream's albums. Yeah, he produced some of Cream's material. Well, he was well known, and I think Leslie West, as a guitar player for many, when Leslie passed away, lots and lots of people, Zakk Wylde, everybody came out and said, what an amazing influence Leslie West has. So Mountain were one of those great bands, and finally, shout out to a band who are probably let's call them the poor cousins of Rush, which is Triumph, who I remember seeing on footage for the Us Festival in 1983, where you had Ozzy's first gig, or first proper gig with Jackie Lee. It was Jackie Lee's first gig. You had a young Motley Crue. You then had Judas Priest, Van Halen, and in amongst this, you had this nice band, three-piece, called Triumph, which has got Rick Emmett, Jill Moore, with the co-lead singers of Triumph, and they obviously high-pitched singing, very much akin to Geddy Lee, and that was my introduction to Triumph, who I thought were a great band, and sadly are no more. So those would be my additions to it. So Power Trios, yeah, you earn your money in a three-piece band, nowhere to hide.
Indeed, yeah. But of course, we've probably forgotten a handful. So if you want to fill in the blanks, as it were, let us know on Facebook or on Twitter at FTAT Pod, or even on Instagram, where you can find us, of course, if you dig around.
Exactly.
Alrighty, so
we come to that part of the show.
We do. Everyone's favourite part of the old podcast. I forgot to tell you, I was walking around Stone Dead Festival, when we were there in the summer, and bumped into quite a few people there. I bumped into the guitarist from Massive Wagon, Steve Holl, actually. I forgot to mention that. It's a nice guy. I bumped into a few other people, and they said to me, I want to talk to you about the podcast. I said, okay, fine, of course. Very welcome. He said, Brian's our favourite. I said, yeah, of course. And he said, no, our favourite. I said, what do you mean our? I said, no, everyone at Stone Dead, Brian's our favourite. I thought, okay, fair enough. And they said, the other part of the podcast we really like is
Hidden Gems Eyes.
Thank you, Lola. Lovely voice as always. So, what you got for us, Brian?
As my hidden gem, and you might argue with me, Matt, whether this is a hidden gem or not, but it's a recent release, and it's a remaster of an album that was released in 1977 in the height of punk, and it is Animals by Pink Floyd. Now you might go, why are you picking an album from Pink Floyd? I just think for somebody who, I love Wish You Were Here, I love Dark Side of the Moon, and I love The Wall, in between Wish You Were Here and The Wall, Animals sits there, and it feels like the poor cousin. And obviously it's been remastered, And finally, David Gilmour and Roger Waters could agree on the wording that would go into the book. So it took a bit of time coming out. It's come out. I've had a listen to it, and it's a really, really good, it's a great album. Dark as Anything obviously takes a lot of the concept is around Animal Farm, and it's very George Orwell based. But my recommendation for Hidden Gems is Animals
by Pink Floyd. Very good. Very good. Interesting. You're right. It does get a little bit kind of overshadowed by the three other kind of mega albums, Dark Side,
Yeah.
Wish You Were Here, and The Wall, of course. So, yeah, good shout.
Thank you. What about you?
Good shout. Well, do you remember back in 2020?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember back in 2020 when I think it was probably about episode 5 or something like that?
Okay.
I was talking about new music,
Yes.
and a singer by the name of Katie Pruitt.
Yes.
At the time had a song. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I
Do you
do
remember
indeed.
her?
I do indeed.
At the time she had a song out called Expectations, which I think from memory was one of my favorite songs of 2020. In fact, it's one of my favorite songs of the last 10 years. And so I went back and listened to the album, which is also called Expectations, which is also from 2020. And I'm wondering why I've waited this long, because it is absolutely beautiful. It's not your kind of classic rock album. We've talked about various metal and rock bands even today on this podcast, but this is a much more kind of more sort of Jeff Buckley, I would suggest. In fact, there's a heavy Jeff Buckley, Grace era influence, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way, because that's a fantastic album. And this is a great album too. Standout songs for me: Wishful Thinking, My Mind's a Ship That's Going Down, Normal, Grace is a Gun. So yeah, check it out. I really would recommend it. If you want a little bit of kind of Sunday morning, kind of wake up after a heavy night on the Jack Daniels and Coke type music, Bri, we've all been there. And then check out the album from 2020 by Katie Pruitt called Expectations.
I shall put some of her material on the playlist.
Oh, very good. I look forward to it.
Good.
So, Ryan, that was it. Episode 37 done, dusted, in the bag. Speak to you next time for episode 38.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, everyone, please check us out on Facebook and on Twitter at FTATpod. And we shall see you next time for episode 38. Take care of yourselves. Keep on rocking.
See everybody. Take care. Bye.
This episode is dedicated to the memory of John Northwood. This is a Maylie Rogers production.